Welcome back to another episode of the Makers Podcast. My guest on today's episode is Jess Butcher MBE, co-founder of Blippar, which was one of the first AR companies to enter the market. Not only is Jess an angel investor, but she's also co-founder at TechDone, the microwave video platform that allows you to create stories in minutes and learn in seconds. We have just raised £500,000 from CCamp. I couldn't be more excited to welcome today's guest, Jess Butcher. So Jess, how are you doing today?
Good, thank you.
Great. So tell me, what did you have for breakfast this morning?
That's a question, and I've got a shockingly bad response, which is nothing. I'm a pint of coffee for breakfast person. That's what I have. I have an early lunch around noon, but I'm not a breakfast person.
Great. And what is your favourite company right now, apart from tech?
My favourite company. Company is an interesting question. Product, the one I'm obsessed with at the moment is Blinkist.
Okay.
Really like that. Like inhale 3 or 4 books and frequently it leads me to wanting to buy those books, even though it's supposed to be an alternative to you needing to read the whole book. Have you heard of Blinkist?
I've second founder who said that today.
Yeah, really like it. Really
they send you an email every morning or something?
Send you an email every morning, so you're discovering things.
Oh, wow.
But then just browsing in the app itself is really interesting.
Great. And what is the one thing you wish you did differently before you turned 20?
One thing I wish I'd done differently before I turned 20. Be nicer to my little sister.
Do you want to go into details about that?
No, she was just always like 5 years younger. She was just, to me, a little kid. And I wish I'd kind of got to know her a bit better at that age. Before I then left home and then it became more sporadic.
Awesome. And so for our audience doing anything about you, could you just summarise your career to date in 30 seconds?
Scatty, messy, very unstructured CV that saw me moving, every 18 months to a different company. But with hindsight, there was a pattern, which is that I have always been attracted to the communications, partnerships and BD side of disruptive models. So anything that was challenging the consumer's perception of a particular industry is where I wanted to be. There, disrupting and helping to communicate why that was a new, awesome way of doing something.
And obviously you launched Blippar in 2011 with your 2 co-founders, Rish and Omar.
And Steve, there was a third.
And Steve?
Yeah.
What was the eureka moment behind it?
It wasn't hard with a technology like that because we were the first with a really solid and impressive augmented reality tool. To see magic happen in your hand out of the physical world was a eureka moment for everybody. And we were so fortunate to be offering that eureka moment when we went to market with that product. And of course, I experienced it for myself the first time I saw it. And my brain was off on all the ramifications of how it could be used and how we could tell stories with it and the sort of things that we could bring to life with the sort of digital functionality that was available and, of course, ever expanding at that time. So it was one of those perfect eureka businesses, really, because you'd see that delight happen in people's faces as you showed it to them and them immediately applying their own ideas to how it could be employed.
And you mentioned the eureka business. What was Blippar? Our audience didn't know anything about it.
Yeah, so it evolved very much over the course of its journey. It started as the world's first augmented reality browser. So it was a consumer app that was used to unlock any piece of physical collateral, whether that be a billboard, a piece of newsprint or a product package or a railway ticket, into an interactive digital experience, from videos to augmented reality to web links. So we were the technology behind that, and we were also the consumer lens to access that. As the business evolved, it evolved more into a pure play technology business that moved very deeply into technologies such as computer vision and AI machine learning, and of course the augmented reality. So we increasingly started to sell more tools to other people to deliver those experiences without necessarily having to own it as a consumer lens ourselves.
And right back into those early days, the first couple of years, what was the original business model?
It was an inadvertent business model. When we started it, we figured we could become a performance-based tool that, you would only pay on the basis of the numbers of interactions that you might have. That was our thesis, our working thesis as we went to market. What we realised very quickly was that people didn't really understand how to use that as its own medium, which it was. There was it was its own medium, and people didn't really get that. They wanted to mesh together other formats. Can I play my video on my press ad, for example, was a typical brief. So we actually built a business model that enabled us to scale that business without requiring funding in the early days by building an agency on the side of our tech, where we offered creative and consultative services to brands to actually take the whole project on rather than just be the tech component. And that was very, very lucrative. And we grew the team to about 30 people using those agency revenues before we then started to monetize the technology more.
And when it was just you four starting out, you were CMO until 2015. Mm-hmm. What were some of those really early challenges that you faced?
Oh, so many. The first was... obviously, everyone would have a eureka experience on doing it, but there wasn't a lot of appetite for risk and that much bravery. As an individual, you could like it, but getting buy-in from stakeholders and senior marketers with budget to actually convert into a tangible project was tough. The biggest problem I think we had with the consumer side of our model was that we were ultimately an ad tech. And an ad tech it can never be an ad tech on its own. It needs to be delivering some consumer value before you can offer advertising value around the edges of it. So an app that just converts cereal boxes and adverts and billboards into interactive experiences without offering any other functionality, it's always going to be accused of being a gimmick. Once you've seen the AR, it's very hard to keep that wow eureka perception of everything thereafter. And that was where the computer vision aspect of what we were doing, the ability to look at anything in the physical world, started to turbocharge that. But it was very... Those are some of the broader macro challenges. The other challenges were me as a first-time founder, learning how to manage people, how to inspire people, how to be a little bit more measured, perhaps, in how I did that. A bit less heart on sleeve when it came to showing disappointment or frustration, and I think I did learn about myself that I'm perhaps not the best people manager in that respect because of some of those personality traits.
And how did you get people's creative juices flowing if you wanted to inspire people?
That's never really been a problem I've had. I suspect that's probably one of my strengths is getting other people to think. And I've thought about this quite a bit because I'm a good generalist. I'm not a deep specialist in anything. Having worked across so many industries and various disciplines, albeit normally on the front line of businesses, I know a little bit about a lot of things. So I tend to sit at hinge points between experts to get them to think about what they're doing in a slightly different way, or to apply it to a new industry, or think creatively about it. And as a natural marketer, I like to just kind of throw balls into a mix and have other people bat them around for a bit and see what happens, ask the right questions.
And if we just rewind, you said earlier about your business was almost looked at as a gimmick, but you raised $131 million, which is huge. How did you convince investors to back you?
I could think they were investing in a solid and very visionary founding team with very non-overlapping complementary skill sets. And they were investing in a technology as well, and arguably, or not really arguably, justifiably, perhaps the best technology in the world of that kind. So they were investing in a solid team that was working on one of the next big consumer technology trends that was going to happen. Those are two very exciting propositions for investors. The question mark was always going to be around which business models would win in the augmented reality space, and how quickly could a startup gain enough momentum to remove the risk that might come from the big incumbents with the deep pockets coming into the same space.
And what were some of those revenue models you looked at if that didn't quite work?
Well, it was hard to sell performance in the early stages before people ever knew what we wanted. And then there were SaaS models that did work very well. I think the challenge was always building a funnel, though, given the pricing structure, to get enough in the top to drop out the bottom. And it was always how long's a piece of string as far as the pricing model was concerned. There were a lot of iterations of different models, and the need to have to change tack. So we also weren't going really deep into evaluating each model before we'd move on, because there'd be someone else in that space, or because we realised that vertical wasn't perhaps as promising as we had perhaps first thought.
And was it hard for you and your team to get up? I guess when you have competitors in the space, how do you make sure you can be better than them and get fired up every morning and say, I can be better than you, or we can be better than you?
Two things that I guess I think around competitors. The first is I was very fortunate with the product technical team that I was working with, that I always had 100% faith that they are on top of the very best tech, and always challenging, always creating, always building, and hiring very, very well. And whenever we came head to head on tech questions where people much better than me, much more tech savvy than me, could actually qualify how good our tech was, we would always kind of win an A/B test. And that just continued to happen throughout the whole journey. It got to the stage that I was just so reassured by the quality of who I've frankly been very fortunate enough to partner with, because I wasn't able to qualify that. I just came to believe that after a while. The second thing, though, is that we also always embraced competition, because it was a new medium and a new behaviour and a new way of thinking. No one company can build mass momentum on its own. So we always thought, bring it on, as far as competitor was concerned. There were always going to be lots of different models in the market, and indeed one of our investors was an alternative model within the market. They recognised that we all needed each other to have success in order for that snowball to take effect. The problems with that was when competitors did things that discredited the perception of the technology, and that did happen. There were models in the market when we started that were sort of DIY SaaS creators for AR, and what that meant is that everybody and their dog did floating video ads on press ads, which the first time you see that you think that's kind of cool, but the second, the third, the fourth time, it totally trashed the end of the market and the perception of AR as being gimmicky. And it was at that stage that we moved into that more premium play around advisory and consultancy work and creative services, to demonstrate that you shouldn't be thinking about it in that sort of short-termist, scrappy, end of the creative cycle way. You need to build this in as a way of thinking very early on in the process, and much more strategically and creatively. And that actually is the greatest gift that I believe Blippar gave to that industry, was best practice, creative strategic thinking about how you tell stories in a way that now every single AR business that is being that started up at the moment, and there's some tremendous examples of really, really fantastic AR. They've all followed that model. This is a new way of educating and looking inside the human body, or seeing the solar system, or taking a time machine to ruins and looking down the street and imagining what it looked like 300 years ago. That was always our vision. The limitation was in the creative skills to create those experiences. It was never in the technology, in creativity and mindset to invest in that creativity.
Which AR companies did you really aspire to be like?
There wasn't anyone that we aspired to be like when we were growing. I mean, now, do you know, I felt guilty. I'm not really. I'm running a new business. I don't spend a lot of time immersed in the AR world looking at great competitors. I guess it's less companies because they're typically techie companies. It's more applications of the tech that I've seen that I think are really lovely. And the ones I tune into are those educational applications. You know, I'm a historian actually by education, and I love time machines. I love interactive anatomy training for children and science being brought to life in that way.
Awesome. And before we go on to growing the business, talking about your personal life, you have always kept your name Butcher, but you are also known as Jessica Simpson.
Yes.
Why? I mean, when we met up last week, what was really interesting is you have your personal life and you have your business life. Why did you want to keep both names?
It was an accident that I kept both because Butcher was the name that I launched Blippar with. So that was the name that people knew me as in the entrepreneurial community. And as that business took off, speaking opportunities and awards happened, and, you know, fantastic profile raising opportunities that I, of course, took full advantage of. And then you can't just slap a new name on that as a personal brand, particularly not a new name that's already taken on Google by an A-list, possibly B-list, don't mean to be rude, American pop star actress. So, you know, I was not going to be discoverable with Simpson. So by accident, I kept my maiden name, not through any great feminist reason, but more through, you know, just the logistics of that as a challenge. And now I really embrace it. I love having what I feel to be these sort of two slightly separate personas. You know, Butcher is who I am when I talk and I do podcasts and I speak at conferences, and I'm running after business connections and investors and trying to make businesses happen. And Simpson is the mum of my three incredibly gorgeous, amazing children, and the wife to my husband, who lives in Hertfordshire, who's less articulate, doesn't dress very well, very harassed. The mum who all the other mums have to help out because she's forgotten that it's book day, or even that it's school holidays, and has been guilty of taking her children in on the first day of holidays in full uniform. That's her. But I like her. She's kamikaze crazy and very disorganised, but I love that I can have those two separate lives.
So when you go home, is it you don't do any work? Is that family time?
I try and do that as much as possible. I never had that clear delineation before I had young children, and now I do. Their time is their time. It doesn't mean that after bedtime I can't be Butcher again, and, you know, there can be some work. But I'm also very precious about my relationship with my husband and the fact that needs to be invested in. We're not just their parents, we're also, you know, a romantic couple and need to give each other time and make time for that. So I try and keep my weekends offline as much as possible. And
a typical day, what does that look like for you?
I'm in London 4 days a week, sometimes 5 depending on events. I try and get home by 6 o'clock every evening, so I'm there for the bedtime hour. I'm trying to get much more mercenary about evening events, so I'll only do 1, possibly 2 in London a week, and getting better at saying no, much to my regret, because I'd obviously like to be more, but I can't be Butcher all the time. So 9 till 5 in London. I get time to work and read on the train, which is really nice, and that's been a benefit to moving out of London, because you can't do that when you're stood in someone else's armpit, but you can when you've got a seat. And my days are all meetings, particularly at this stage of my new business. It's about identifying potential investors, partners, media opportunities, team members, a lot of hiring, a lot of talking with the new growing team that we have, and a lot of strategizing with my co-founders. So a lot of talking and listening mostly.
Amazing. And before we go on to your company, Tick, unfortunately Blippar had not a very good ending towards the end of last year. But not going into too much detail, but just what were those conversations like with your three co-founders? How did you come together and, I guess, have those emotional conversations?
Well, obviously these things don't happen in a sudden, incident. We've all been very close to, the business's story over the past few years. If I'm honest, me less so, because I've been having child after child after child over the last 3-4 years. So my involvement was at a very, very macro, high level. So really, I'd say the others were more directly day-to-day involved in and would have suffered, I expect, a great deal more stress during that process than I did. But all of us remain very, very proud of what we built. The fact that a tenth, if not 20% of the people that we brought into that business have gone on to start up and build other businesses. If not just in the last 6 months, but over the last sort of 4 or 5 years, is testament to this sort of very mission-driven type of business that we were, and how we trained and developed the people within our business. We pioneered and thought-led within one of the most exciting fields of technology for a huge number, the most formative years. And I think we have all thoroughly enjoyed that journey and our experiences and the learnings that they've given each of us respectively. So, you can take all those things, you can just look at the negative, or you can look at all the positives, and I choose very much to do the latter, because it's been the springboard that is enabling me to do what I do now, and it's given me the most incredible network opportunities and this rich scrapbook of experiences, from going to China with the Prime Minister to speaking at incredible events to meeting some of the great and the good in the world today, the biggest thinkers and doers. Who can possibly regret any of that, no matter how it ended up? And indeed, the footnote is still being written. That business has phoenixed over recent weeks, and Blippar is down but not out. I am so excited to see where they go with that new product, with a new team working on it, and I have every expectation it will continue to make waves within the industry.
And can you remember yourself sitting down? I think it was in the pub where the first idea came from. Mm-hmm. Can you remember those humble beginnings?
Very clearly, very, very clearly. So my own journey to the business was with Rish, who was a friend and ex-colleague of mine. And I remember that first coffee meeting. So he and Omar had the original pub chat, as is in the folklore of the company, and the £20 note discussion about the Queen coming to life. I was invited into that journey, some weeks later, and I remember having the conversation with Risha. I think it was ping pong in Soho, and suddenly thinking, Christ, I want to get it. I want to be on that. I want to be on a seat on that rocket, because that looks like the most exciting thing I think I've ever heard of from a business perspective. And I remember vividly going back to my boyfriend at the time, now husband, and saying, wow, you should see this thing, and I want in.
What does your husband think of you as an entrepreneur?
He loves it. I mean, he's my biggest PR. It's kind of embarrassing, actually, particularly when I'm Simpson in Hertfordshire and not really interested in talking about business, that I'll hear him tell somebody on the other side of the table at a kid's party that his wife's got an MBE for being a tech entrepreneur, and I'll just think, stop, this is not appropriate, and it sounds braggy. And he's always been the best business development, sales, PR person for any of the businesses that I've been involved with. He's always talking about it. I can see him whipping his phone out to show people how my various apps or businesses work, and I love him for it, but it can be a bit embarrassing sometimes.
Well, let's mention your MBE. How was it when you got that news?
Oh, it was thrilling. It was a big surprise because I wasn't expecting it, and I got the letter on my 40th birthday, which was just such a ridiculous timing. And I still don't know to this day who nominated me for it, so that remains a great mystery. I'd love to find out. Do you know what I was most pleased about? It was the opportunity to take my mum to something and for her to have a sense that I had been doing something right, because everything that I've done over the last 8 years has gone so far over her head that it's been really frustrating to her not to be able to tell her friends what I did, because she had no idea. She couldn't even pronounce augmented reality. You know, she'd always get it wrong. She'd change the augmented to obnoxious reality, or I don't know. She wouldn't, would never really be able to explain. But that was the most tangible thing that she could tell people about. So, and being able to go to the palace with her and my husband and my brother and my sister-in-law was just such a thrill.
Amazing. And your new company, Tick, that allows you to create stories in minutes and learn something in seconds. Mm-hmm. How did you manage to meet your co-founders? It's a really interesting story.
Yeah, so after my most intensive years at Blippar, I moved into, I guess, more of a portfolio of interests. And my favourite thing within that was always working with early stage startups. So I was part of, or informally would get involved with accelerator schemes and startup competitions and some VC portfolio work. And I loved the work that I was doing at Zinc, the accelerator that started a couple of years ago, that has social purpose very much baked into its raison d'etre. And they, rather like Entrepreneur First, would take a cohort of individuals pre-idea, matchmake them and hatch businesses out around a specific social purpose for each mission. Franz and Cedric were on that first mission and really gelled, and got very excited about a few ideas together, and I was one of their earliest sounding boards as that idea evolved. And I loved working with them as individuals, but as this idea evolved, it started to increasingly tick a lot of my personal concerns and interests as far as a startup business and some broader societal concerns that I had around the way in which tech was going was concerned. And it just, got me more and more excited, and I tend to make spontaneous decisions and move with my gut, and I was an advisor to them, and then I was going to be an advisory co-founder, and then I just thought, you can't do this unless you do it properly. Right, I'm in. Bang goes the portfolio. Wow. I am signed up and back at the coalface and the bottom of the heap again.
And how are you finding it so far? Is it good fun to get back in that driving seat?
Oh, I love it. This was always my favourite stage at Blippar. I like the conjuring something out of nothing other than an idea phase. I'm at my happiest as a scrappy generalist at this stage of business building, partly because the impact is so tangible. The steps, the leaps that you take from nothing are fast and frenetic, and you can just change direction and move and mould what you're doing in such a creative way. So I love it. I mean, there are frustrations, no doubt, but they're more than outweighed by the fun that I'm having in being back at this stage.
Some of those challenges, what are you facing right now?
Well, you've got a hypothesis of something that you feel very, very strongly about, and a real vision and mission with that. But there are multiple ways to validate or otherwise that. And I think that, validate or not, I should say. And there's always that sense of there's something missing. What are we not doing? Why isn't it taking off as fast as you'd like? And this is true in every single startup. And there are no golden bullets. And in some ways, having been around the block a few times is quite beneficial in doing another startup, because I'm not constantly looking for that purple cow or golden bullet. If an idea like that comes up in a team meeting, I'm like, that is awesome, love that, we should definitely give that a shot. But we need 23 of those, and we also need to do the basic boring stuff really well. You've got to work a funnel, you've got to put people through it, you've got to A/B test. It's dry, it's dull, it feels thankless sometimes. But unfortunately, at this stage of a business, most of the learnings that you're getting, 99% of the learnings you're getting, are how not to do it, not how to do it. And then it's every time you get a gleam of promise, work on that, expand upon that, try something else, and another nugget drops out the bottom, and cumulatively they start to validate whether your mission's right or not, and that's very much at the stage we're at right now.
Well, talking about those golden nuggets, you were given some capital by Camp last year. What is the BHAG, the Big Hairy Audacious Goal, tick in the next 5 years?
Yes, so I've talked in very general terms about being a startup again, not what we do. Let me tell you what we do. So Tick is a very ambitious micro video platform, and our mission is to empower 1 billion people with 1 million new skills, and we hope to achieve that within the next 2 to 3 years. That's the scale and speed with which we want to build this thing. So what it is Instagram stories meets a sort of Wikipedia-esque online open bank of knowledge. The problems that we're solving are that we feel the internet is too full. It's flabby. It's so great for free content, but in some ways there's too much of it. And when you go online now with a quick question that requires a quick answer, it's very, very hard to find that quick answer. It'll be buried 17 minutes into a YouTube or in a long form internet page or in a podcast somewhere. And that's wrong. And yet the business models that are delivering this content are designed expressly to keep us online for as long as possible. It's about data, it's about delivering dopamine, it's about creating addictions. It's replaying the next video and targeting that towards some weakness that you've demonstrated in your previous browsing history, and polarizing you with viewpoints that confirm your existing viewpoints. And these are... We've been almost joking about the negative behaviours that we're witnessing in ourselves for the last few years, and I think that we've suddenly reached a point at which that's not funny anymore. It's genuinely starting to alarm people that the hours that we're spending online, the speed with which we can be distracted, and frankly the narcissism inherent in so many of these trends, particularly the social media trends, that are all about me, what I look like, what I had for dinner, what the sunset that I am looking at right now, this rose-tinted view of me, as opposed to what we would want to build, which is a platform which is about what you love, what you're good at, what you have to contribute and share with the world. So Tick's mission is to take that story format and get people educating and empowering others through how-to content.
And do you think this can be $1 billion company one day?
I wouldn't be doing it unless I believe that. That's unfortunately the only business that I'm interested in building. A go big or go home behavioural disruptor. So yes, absolutely. We want to be the default. Anytime you have a question that is of a practical, real-world nature, how do I fix something? How do I make something? How do I cook something? Inspiration for something to do with your time. If it starts with a how-to, there will be a Tick response that will give you that answer in less than a minute, so that you can get offline, doing, creating, building, playing, and not wasting any more of your life looking online for that answer.
So is Tick going to be a subscription model, or how's that going to work?
Well, it's an open, free content platform. There are numerous ways in which we expect to monetize, although this is a almost sort of West Coast business model. We need to reach scale before we anticipate doing that. But the more likely models for us, rather than time online, more content, watch something else, is commerce. We're going to have a very qualified audience of people very specifically interested in the content. So whether it's an ingredient, a yoga mat, a DIY tool, an item of clothing, a piece of a makeup appliance, or a printer cartridge, all of these things, there will be the opportunity to simply buy what you've witnessed within the video. But there are many other models that we can employ that I believe don't conflict with this desire to get people offline, from B2B, closed garden versions, opportunities for brands to reward loyalty from their customer base in terms of what they create. We're really excited to see where we could go with this at scale.
Wow, it's so exciting. So our audience can find out at tick.co?
Tick.co, or just go to App Store. I should say we're more commonly known as Tick Done than just Tick right now. Tick Done is the best thing to search. So it's a free app. It's a creator tool and a viewing platform. And once the content is created, it's then distributable across the web and discoverable on Google through the AMP story format.
How did you get the domain tick.co? Was that not taken?
It wasn't taken, which we were quite happy about, obviously.
Great. This is probably worth quite a lot, isn't it?
Well, it wasn't when we bought it. Hopefully it will be by now. And we like the .co. I think there's a nice cadence at tick.co.
Love it. So to finish off, what are the 3 top pieces of advice you would give to an entrepreneur?
It's coming up with 3. I'll either think of 30 or only 1. The first is network. I talk about this a lot when I'm speaking. Is your network is your biggest asset, and it's proven mine. I built mine kind of inadvertently by having far too many jobs in my 20s and moving so much, and it wasn't until I started my own business that I realised how incredibly valuable that network is. In terms of, I was only a degree or 2 away from anyone that I needed to speak to as either an advisor, a sounding board, or a potential client or journalist. And it's you've got to very proactively invest in your network. Those people that you think you find are interesting, you might not have any specific reasons to do business with them, but if you peg them as somebody who you think is interesting, just be sure to keep in contact with them, drop them an update, see how you can help them. Because related to network is probably my second bit of advice, which is it's about karma, as in the KARMA version of karma, which I'm a firm believer in business karma. And I spent a lot of time after I moved out of the front seat of Blippar just giving my time for free to other entrepreneurs. And this wasn't me thinking I'm going to store up, some people that I can go back to for advice in due course, although that has been possible. It's more just because I was interested in them and their ideas and nosy, and if I could help them in some way, all of this comes full circle. They'll help somebody that I want to help in due course, and it's always a win-win. You don't always know where the opportunities are going to come from. And third, and they're all kind of related, is this concept of mentoring. Mentoring is typically thought of with a capital M, and this sort of formal desire to be a mentor or have a mentor and approach someone and say, will you be my mentor? Where some of those relationships can be incredibly valuable, I prefer a definition of mentor with a lowercase m, which is that you're always being mentored and you always can mentor. And what a lot of people don't understand is the value to the mentor of giving advice, not just the mentee. And I realised this on the course of my Blippar journey, that sort of 2 or so years into that journey, people were suddenly asking me, how did you do that? And can you help me? And I, at first I think, I'm not qualified to help you. I don't know anything about anything. And when I would sit down and start to listen to their questions, I realised, what you should think about and what you could do. And this was a problem we had. And it was only by mentoring other people that I could really take stock of quite how much I had learnt, and which enabled me to climb my own ladder that much faster. Because you can get stuck on a rung very, very easily and get complacent. Whereas if you share your knowledge, it helps you look up again and actually think, oh, that's where I need to be. Actually, that isn't a big enough client for us anymore, and that's not a fast enough growth trajectory, or we can go to the next tier of investors now. And it's absolutely critical part of your own personal development. And I believe that's as true for an 18-year-old mentoring a 15-year-old as a 60-year-old mentoring a 30-year-old. It's not about the amount of experience, it's just paying it down the ladder helps you climb your own ladder.
Well, you built such a big network. Who is the most inspirational entrepreneur to you in your network?
Yeah, interesting question. Different people for different things, if I'm honest. The most instrumental to me, most tangible in terms of opportunities and learnings, is probably Sherry Kutu, who entrepreneur herself, angel investor, and involved as on boards, and now the founder of Founders for Schools, the Scale Up Institute. She's one of those people that just constantly works karma and gives. And I have been the recipient of so many initiatives that she's worked on that have expanded my network and horizons dramatically.
Amazing. And just to finish off, I hear you're a bit of a bargain queen.
Yes.
What is the best bargain you have ever found?
You could have pre-warned me of that question. So I love charity shops. I spend a lot of time in charity shops, and I always will. Even if I was a multi-gazillionaire, I would still spend time in charity shops because I love the thrill of finding a gem. You've got to have patience. 99% of that stuff in a charity shop is rubbish. But the 1% item of the beautiful leather jacket, or the book that is a first edition or something like that, could I pick out one thing out of all of those? I did buy the most beautiful sofa off the side of a road in Hitchin Market for about 70 quid, a sofa and 2 armchairs. I was quite chuffed with that, and I always make sure I tell people when they come round to our house, that's the pavement sofa.
Wow. Well, Jess, thank you so much for your time. It's been fascinating, and good luck with Dick.
Thank you so much.